Prabhupada simply stressed the purity of book distribution and encouraged the book distributors to continue without interruption. The main thing was to distribute books. Devotees continued to press Srila Prabhupada for further clarification. The book distributors were concerned that the urgency of book distribution could not be minimized, whereas other responsible ISKCON leaders were concerned that loose practices might hamper the society's progress. Prabhupada replied to questions by Bali Madan of New York with a letter that became particularly influential. The real preaching is selling books. You should know the tactic, how to sell without irritating. What your lecture will do for 3 minutes, but if he reads one page, his life may be turned. We don't want to irritate anyone. However, if he goes away by your aggressive tactics, then you are nonsense, and it is your failure. Neither you could sell a book, neither he would remain. But if he buys a book, there is the real successful preaching. Prabhupada's position was clear. The books should be sold, but expertly. And lest there be any doubt, Prabhupada reiterated that the book distribution is the best preaching. The success of your preaching will be substantiated by how many books are sold. Prabhupada also wrote, the art is to sell many, many books and not to irritate the public. As books continued to go out by the millions, many people expressed their thanks on receiving a book. Only occasionally would someone complain. But within ISKCON, the dialogue regarding book distribution techniques continued. When Sri Govinda, the president of ISKCON Chicago, wrote Prabhupada, Prabhupada encouraged him in his attempt to reform the devotees engaged in excessive practices. So it is not very much advisable to make lies just to sell books. If we simply stick to describing how wonderful is Krishna, that will not be a lie. But other things, lies, they will not help us to train ourselves in truthfulness. Lying to some, not to others, that is not a good philosophy. Rather, the Brahmins are always truthful, even to their enemies. There is sufficient merit in our books that if you simply describe them sincerely to anyone, they will buy. That art you must develop, not art of lying. Convince them to give by your preaching the absolute truth, not by tricking. That is the mature stage of development of Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Book distribution ki jai. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktarinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktarinda. So we're reading from the Adi Leela of Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's chapter 8, and it's text 31. Chaitanya Nityanande Nahi E Sabha Vichara Chaitanya Nityanande Nahi E Sabha Vichara. Oh, sorry, it's not coming up. Sorry, I'll just run through it. Nama Laite Prema Dena Vahi Ashrudhara. So I'll just run through that. Chaitanya Nityanande Nahi Esabha Vichara. Nama Laite Prema Dena Vahi Ashrudhara. So word for word. Chaitanya Nityanande. When chanting the holy names of Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda, Nahi, there are not. Esava, all these. Vichara, considerations. Nama, the holy name. Laite, simply by chanting. Prema, love of Godhead. Dena, they give. Vahe, there is a flow. Ashrudhara, tears in the eyes. So read the translation. But if one only chants with some slight faith the holy names of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, very quickly he is cleansed of all offenses. Thus, as soon as he chants the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, he feels the ecstasy of love for God. responsibly, please. But if one only chants with some slight faith the holy names of Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda, very quickly is cleansed of all offenses. Thus, as soon as he chants the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, he feels the ecstasy of love for God. Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur remarks in this connection that if one takes shelter of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda, follows their instructions to become more tolerant than the tree and humbler than the grass, and in this way chants the holy name of the Lord, very soon he achieves the platform of transcendental loving service to the Lord, and tears appear in his eyes. There are offenses to be considered in chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, but there are no such considerations in chanting the names of Gaura and Nityananda. Therefore, if one chants the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, but his life is still full of sinful activities, it will be very difficult for him to achieve the platform of loving service to the Lord. But if in spite of being an offender, one chants the holy names of Gaura and Nityananda, he is very quickly freed from the reactions to his offenses. Therefore, one should first approach Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda, or worship Guru Gauranga, and then come to the stage of worshipping Radha Krishna. In our Krishna consciousness movement, our students are first advised to worship Guru Gauranga, and then when they're somewhat advanced, the Radha Krishna deity is installed, and they are engaged in the worship of the Lord. One should first take shelter of Gaura Nityananda in order to reach ultimately Radha Krishna. Srila Narottam Das Thakur sings in this connection, Gauranga Balati Habi Polakashali, Hari Hari Balite Nai Nai Babi Nila, Ara Kabi Nitai Chanda Kaluna Habe, Samsara Vasana Mora, Kabi Tucha Habe, Vishaya Chadaya Kabe, Shuddha Habe Mana, Kabi Hama Hariba Shri Vrindavana. In the beginning, one should very regularly chant Sri Gaurasundra's holy name and then chant the holy name of Lord Nityananda. Thus one's heart will be cleansed of impure desires for material enjoyment. Then one can approach Vrindavan Dham to worship Lord Krishna. Unless one is favoured by Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda, there is no need to go to Vrindavan. For unless one's mind is purified, he cannot see Vrindavan, even if he goes there. Actually, going to Vrindavan involves taking charge of the 6 Goswamis by reading the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Viraga Madhava, Lalita Madhava, and the other books that they have given. In this way, one can understand the transcendental, loving affairs between Radha and Krishna. Kami Hava Bhuja Se Yugala Pariti. The conjugal love between Radha and Krishna is not an ordinary human affair. It is fully transcendental. In order to understand Radha and Krishna, worship them, and engage in their loving service, one must be guided by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, and the 6 Goswamis, Lord Chaitanya's direct disciples. For an ordinary man, worship of Sri Chaitanya and Nityananda Prabhu, or the Panchatattva, is easier than worship of Radha and Krishna. Unless one is very fortunate, he should not be induced to worship Radha Krishna directly. A neophyte student who is not sufficiently educated or enlightened should not indulge in the worship of Sri Radha and Krishna or the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. Even if he does so, he cannot get the desired result. One should therefore chant the names of Nitai Gaura and worship them without false prestige. Since everyone within this material world is more or less influenced by sinful activities, in the beginning it is essential that one take to the worship of Guru Gauranga and ask their favour. For thus, despite all his disqualifications, one will very soon become qualified to worship the Radha Krishna Vigraha. It should be noted in this connection that the holy names of Lord Krishna and Gaurasundra are both identical with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, one should not consider one name to be more potent than the other. Considering the position of the people of this age, however, the chanting of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's name is more essential than the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the most magnanimous incarnation, and his mercy is very easily achieved. Therefore, one must first take shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by chanting Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinda. By serving Gaura Nityananda, one is freed from the entanglements of material existence and thus becomes qualified to worship the Radha Krishna deity. Om Ganatamalanda Shaganandina Shalakaya Chakshan Vritanjena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaura Bhattarinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Vanchikapatrubhyascha kripasindhubhyeva cha panitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So if one only chants with some slight faith the holy names of Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda, very quickly he is cleansed of all offences. Thus as soon as he chants the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, he feels the ecstasy of love for God. So I thought it was interesting that it doesn't, in the text, it doesn't say that one feels ecstasy by chanting the names of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. It says by chanting Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda's name, you're cleansed of offences. Once you're cleansed of offences, then when you chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, then you feel the ecstasy of love for God. So I thought that was interesting because and Srila Prabhupada makes the point in the purport that chanting Hare Krishna is the same as approaching Radha Krishna Vigraha, and so to become qualified to worship Radha and Krishna is the same as becoming qualified to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. So it's quite elevated, isn't it? I mean, we tell people right away, we stop people on the street and we say, can you say this mantra, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna? Immediately we say, and they don't even know what it is. But then, and because they're chanting Namabhas, they're not making any offenses, so then they experience some ecstasy, some transcendental ecstasy. But as we proceed along the Bhakti Marg, along the path, then we come across, there's 4 stages initially, which is covered by the first 2 verses of the Shikshastakam, Chaitadapana Marjanam, and Nam Namakari Bahuda, Nisha Sabha Shakti. So those 2 verses cover 4 stages, which is Shraddha, the initial faith, and then Sadhu Sangha, we start to associate with devotees, and then Bhajana Kriya, we make a commitment, and then Anartha Nivritti. So that's the first 2. And then the next stage, Trinadapi Sanichena, the 3rd Shikshastakam, is the stage at which the devotee starts to become fixed. That's referring to Nishta. So Nishta comes when the devotee is freed from anartha. At least 75% of anarthas have become cleansed. So it's interesting. We encourage people to chant right from the word go, but to actually get to the stage of chanting properly, then we have to reach that stage of humility and tolerance. And it's interesting because right away, right off the bat, Srila Prabhupada says, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur remarks in this connection that if one takes shelter of Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda and follows their instructions to become more tolerant than the tree and humbler than the grass. So the question could be asked, okay, I want to do it today. I want to become Nishta. Today I'm going to get really, really humble. I'm just going to just grovel everywhere. Anyone I see, I'm just going to fall down at his feet. I'll grovel over to the prasadam, remove the prasadam. I'll eat my prasadam off the floor. I'm just going to be so humble. So you could maybe think like that. So how do we implement? You decide, okay, this pride is definitely causing me so many problems. I can't chant properly. If I can't chant properly, I'm not getting the proper benefit. This is it. I definitely need to do something about my pride. Okay, I'm going to start being really, really humble. So how do we do that? How do we implement that? So one devotee was saying in a book about japa that you can become more humble by praying more. So although it's a mechanical thing, if you're not praying, then because of pride, you're thinking, well, I'm the doer, and I've got this like I have a list of things to do sometimes, and sometimes the list gets bigger, sometimes it gets slightly smaller, but it helps you realize that you're not in control of what's going on. So then you realize, okay, I'm going to have to do some praying here to do this. Sometimes Krishna puts you in front of obstacles that are going to force you to have to pray, because it becomes quite obvious. I'm not going to be able to do this. It's just too much for me to do this. So then you think, oh, maybe I'm not the one that's supposed to be doing this anyway. Krishna's going to do it. I just need Krishna's help. So we can easily do that. We could, right from the word go now, we could just decide, I'm going to pray like anything from now. I'm just going to keep asking for help and keep praying and keep praying. So that's the dawning of humility starting to come. And then when that humility comes, then we're able to access the mercy of the Holy Name. The Holy Name has to be approached by following the instructions of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, and they're saying, okay, be humble, be tolerant. So you can't ignore that and think, well, I'll maybe be humble and tolerant once I've chanted a lot and I'm getting the bliss and the nectar and the ecstasy. Then I'll do that. You won't get it. To access the Holy Name and get the mercy of the Holy Name, there has to be that mood of humility and tolerance, and then the Holy Name is pleased, and then everything becomes very easy. So, any questions or comments?
You might think, well, theoretically it sounds good, and if ever will be humble, but I'm afraid it might get exploited by people that I think have got ill motives, or who are motivated by false ego. Just take the humble position that want to help them, or else I'll just, people will walk all over me.
So, Prabhupada, for those, because this has come up on the mic, right? May catch it on there. Prabhupada was making a nice point. He's saying, well, somebody may be worried about being humble and tolerant, and word may get round, just like there was a snake, and he was getting a lot of problem, and so everybody found out that the snake had become a sadhu. So the word got around fast, and they were going around to kick the snake. Oh, it's not snake. It's not sadhu snake. You can kick him. He's not going to bite. They're kicking him all over the place. And the snake went to Narada Muni, and he said, the sadhu thing is not really working out because everyone's found out. And so Narada Muni says, well, just show your fangs, and that'll scare them, and then they'll back off, and then you can still be a sadhu and everything. You're not going to actually bite them, but then they'll think twice. So Srila Prabhupada would sometimes be very fiery, and one time actually, because his Guru Maharaj, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, was known as Singer Guru. He was so heavy, and this person would heckle him all the time. Every time he was giving a class, this person would cause such a disturbance. And this person eventually died, and the devotees were really, really happy. And they said to Bhaktisiddhanta, he's dead, he's died. And he says, who's this? That person that's causing all the... And then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur started crying because my best friend has died. And the devotees were just, they couldn't believe, There was so much humility, although he was showing us apparently being quite aggressive and quite fiery, but underneath was a very, very soft heart. But the devotees hadn't seen that. They got a glimpse of just how humble. So we can be very, very well-intentioned, and then at the same time we have to be very practical as well. So, we have all humility, but we realize if I'm going to get things done, I'm going to have to play this role. Is that good? And also it comes up in forgiveness course as well, because Mahaprabhu does this forgiveness course. So the first thing is everyone has to write down all the reasons why they wouldn't want to forgive somebody, all the opposition that you would have. We have a belief system actually that we don't even realize. And the belief system is things like, I can forgive anyone for anything, but I can only forgive him if he's whipped 15 times in public and then I'll forgive him, or whatever it is, but you have a belief system that's already there that you don't even realize is preventing you from forgiving the person. So one of the things that would cause you not to want to forgive is because you could think, if I forgive this person and let him off the hook really easily, he'll take advantage, and then he'll just continue to keep doing the same thing again, and therefore he will take advantage of me, and it won't be good for him, and it won't be good for me, and it won't be good for anybody. So he addresses that problem by saying, well, you're forgiving the person not for his sake, but you're forgiving the person for your sake. And you're being humble, not to be nice to him, but you're being humble because you want to be nice to yourself, because you don't want to have any apparatus or any offenses on yourself. If somebody else wants to be silly and somebody else wants to be horrible, then that's okay, but that's how we're going to navigate around this. Rupa Goswami says, Manashendriya, that we offer them respect in the mind. He's a devotee, he's chanting, he's very, very nice. But is he committed, and is he worshipping the deity? Not really, no, he's not. I don't think he's following that strictly. Okay, then no dandavats. And open your heart and reveal your mind only if his heart is devoid of the propensity to criticize, only if he's well-intentioned, only if I feel I can trust that person, that I can reveal, and he's not going to take advantage of me. So we may have the misunderstanding that being humble means we just go up to Bhakta Bob, say, oh, Bhakta Bob, I'm so out of it, I'm really, really... And then Bhakta Bob puts that on Facebook, and then you have so many problems. So we can be humble, but we can be humble with discrimination as well. So the lowest level of humility is we show them respect in the mind. We don't think horrible of them. We don't think anything. We wish them all the best. We hope things work out for them. And the next level, we actually offer them dandavats. Boo, you're so devoted, you're so committed, you have such a high level of integrity. I really honor that. And if you do that, then you'll get that devotee's level of faith and commitment as well, by honoring them and showing respect. I could never do what you have done. What you have sacrificed, Srila Prabhupada's mission, I could never do, but at least I can prostrate myself. And then for those devotees that we feel empowered by, and we feel as are our well-wishers, then we can just completely open up. Oh, I've got this problem. I think like this sometimes. I have this desire. And then that devotee will not reject us. He'll appreciate that we're being so honest, and that will give us the courage to change, and also it will make us more accountable, so that when we come up against the same thing again, we'll be thinking twice, well, I don't really want to do this again because I'm going to have to give a report of this to the person I've opened my heart to, and he's going to be thinking, this guy's a real case. So even if it's just not to lose face, I'm going to be really cautious here and really strict and just not get involved in this situation because it's going to be bad for me.
Seems like the culture which we're brought up in the West is pride seems to be a strength and humility seems to be a weakness. But it seems like it's the opposite in spiritual.
Yeah.
Maybe you could say something about that.
Yeah. So Prabhupada was saying in the West, the way we're brought up, if you're very proud, then you're considered a very strong person. Push people out the way, kick sand in people's face, they're 3-stone weaklings. And then if you're all the time being apologetic and considerate and helping old ladies across the road, then you're considered like a kind of namby-pamby, do-goody, airy-fairy, tree hugger, kind of creepy guy thing, like that. So you may be seen like that. So in the material world, if we're going around being really humble all the time, then people can take advantage. So Srila Prabhupada, he said, I'm a Calcutta boy, and he was worldly wise, and he didn't like getting cheated. So you could think, well, if someone's a sadhu and they're pure, they should be really easy to rip off. But Srila Prabhupada was very, as the Scottish say, canny, and at the same time He was really, really humble. So we have to revisit what we mean by humility, because the reason we may have an aversion to being forgiving and being tolerant and being humble is because we have a misconception of what that actually means. And that's why we have Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, we have Srila Prabhupada's example. And what they're showing us is what is the perfect way to conduct ourselves in the material world, and at the same time not compromise our bhakti. And that's why we need the example, because if we just read the books and we just try to implement it on our own, then we may become discouraged because we think, oh, I'm going to be lower than the straw in the street today. And you go around and you just get taken advantage of by everybody who comes up to you, you know. So how to implement it in such a way which is productive and empowering. But yeah, we do have a lot of, it's like we know there's 5 things that are very important for Bhakti: Srimad Bhagavatam, chanting Hare Krishna, residing in a holy place, association with the devotees. But what we don't see is that the whole way to access all the different treasures that are there is to follow in the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda, be more tolerant and more humble than the grass. So we're changing from how we were trained in the material world and how we behave. And what's interesting about that is you may be with somebody else that hasn't changed. You're trying to change and be this nice person now, and somebody else is coming from the material world with all their traits and their conditioning, and they haven't quite adjusted just yet. So that's why it's important that we're able to discriminate, so that we can understand, okay, this person is in this position, and therefore I have to behave with them in this way, and this person is in this position, so I have to behave in another way. And this person knows absolutely nothing about anything in spiritual life, so therefore I can't reveal anything too confidential, and I have to behave in a way. It's like one devotee was telling me, this person had been chatting away. He was in the queue. This was a few years ago. This is when mobile phones first came out. And this lady had seen this devotee in robes and everything. And she was thinking, oh, wow, he's a very spiritual person. So she was chatting away, you know. And then the phone went, and the devotee pulled the phone out to answer it. And this person was horrified. You've got a phone. You can't be very spiritual. Then she just stood off from him, you know. She wouldn't speak to him anymore after that. He was a total hypocrite, making out he's a sadhu. He's walking around in his sandals, shaved head, and he's got the latest BlackBerry phone. At that time, the BlackBerry was the best phone, you know. So she was completely like... And so in that situation, it'd have been better on silent, and for him to just have heard it buzzing away, feeling it buzzing away, and just, oh yeah, that's really, you know. So so it's a great art actually, because we're a preaching movement, and we have to take into consideration how we appear to others and how they're going to, and they expect, because we are holy people leading saintly lives, they are expecting a certain type of conduct from us, which we have to comply with, you know, for the benefit of their own spiritual lives. And at the same time, you know, we may be very direct with devotees that have been in the movement for 20, 30 years, because we're expecting, well, Prabhu, you know, you should be, this behavior is not acceptable. Why are you behaving in that way? And the devotee could say, well, that's not very spiritual, is it? And it's also, it's like, you know, if you blow somebody out, if I don't agree with the way somebody's doing something in the temple room, and I try to communicate that to him, and he becomes upset and goes away, like Prabhupada was saying about the books, then you're nonsense, even though you're right, and it's wrong what he was doing. But if he gets upset and he goes away, then you could say as he's walking down the road, well, I'm right anyway, just remember that. So it doesn't really matter whether you're right or wrong. It just matters, are you able to encourage people and at the same time guide them in such a loving way that they don't become discouraged or blown out. So that's a real, it's a real art. It's a terrible feeling when you think you've said something that's discouraged somebody, and then you're not sure if they're going to do any service, but at the same time you want them to do a better level of service than they're doing. So that's why Prabhupada said, managing, you showed so much respect to the managers in ISKCON because it's such a hard thing to do, and it's always your fault. If they don't do it right, it's your fault. And if you tell them they should be doing it right and they go away, it's your fault. It's like really tricky, I want to tell them, but can I tell them just now? Do I have to wait 5 years before I say anything? Will I ever be able to say anything? So it's not easy actually. And that's why we should try and support those that are managing and are trying to do things. We should really try and support them because it's difficult. It's a difficult thing, and they're not getting. It's not like they're getting £5 million a year for it. So it's difficult. So if we can show our support and try and help them, try and assist them, then it'll be easier for them as well. Any other comments, questions?
Yes, someone said that, thank you. The personality solution, to a consistent man and a man being it seems like there's 4 things which we have to do in order to be able to chant the holy name of the Lord constantly.
Yeah.
So that constantly may mean that so we can chant it. Well, constantly it means like so we don't give up, we don't lose the taste, and we can chant from forevermore. So the 4 things was one should chant the name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, think oneself alone and strong in the street. Talk and train devoted with all the sensible speech. So those things, how are they connected?
So Prabhupada's asking, the Trinadapi Salice verse is such an essential verse because for most of us, to reach Nishta will be our life's goal. If we can get to that stage. Prabhupada wanted us all to be Majjhima Adhikaris as quickly as possible because once you're there, you're pretty much over the hump. So he's asking. So there's 4 things. There's more humble than the strong in the street, more tolerant, and it's interesting because tolerant. I just heard recently Mahaprabhu was saying we tend to think of tolerance as just you're chanting and someone comes up and starts slapping your face with a BTG and you just smile at them and they keep slapping your face and you think I'm going to be more tolerant and thank you. They just keep doing it. You're trying to be tolerant. And he was saying another way of looking at the word tolerance is, and the way it's translated sometimes is forgiving. That you're forgiving, and you're not going to be forgiving if you're proud. So you're humble. And this is a really, really hard one. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says real humility means that you think everybody else, not just some, but everyone else is better than you. And that's really, really hard to do that. And be humble to him because he's a sannyasi and he's an initiating guru. And he's been in the movement half an hour longer than me, so that's fine. But who does he think he is? He's not even in. He's just come in the door. I can't be humble to him. But so if everyone's better than you, then you can forgive them. It's easy to forgive people that are better than you and people who aren't as good as you. So then you can be tolerant. And you can forgive the person. And then if you can do that, then when you see the person, like Shiva Maharaj has just been making a point recently with this disciple meeting. In the old days, when a devotee came from another temple, they would immediately pay their obeisances and then they would go and hug the devotee. They were really pleased to see them, He said, now we do it once after Mangalarti, and that's the only time we do it. And he said, and you see devotees come up and going, Vanchakalpa Prabhs. And he says, it's Vanchakalpa, it's Ruby's child, the full mantra, slowly, with your head on the floor. And not that you're expecting everyone else, that you come in, Vanchakalpa, and then everyone else is supposed to go, oh goodness me, it's Maharaj humility, everyone get down quick. No, you're showing your respect. You just go quietly in a corner somewhere and you just say Vajra Kalpa. If they want to do it, then that's up to them. If they don't, then that's fine. You're the one that's showing the respect to them. And then not expecting it from others, because a problem is with expecting honor from others is it puts you in a very disempowering situation, because you can only be humble if other people are going to be humble to you. So you could be really stuck because you may be in a situation where people aren't being very humble. So then you're not going to get a chance to be humble at all. So you've just completely shot yourself in the foot. I'm only going to be nice with everybody else. If everyone else is horrible, okay, well then I'll be horrible as well then, because no one deserves to be treated nicely. So problem with being the older the devotee is, then the more the onus is on him, that he has to initiate the culture. And the culture is that we are respectful and we do honor people. So proactive is I'm going to be really, really nice and humble, irrespective of how people behave toward me.
So you just remind me of a good example of that. Sometimes we think we don't want to be humble because we may get hurt. But the fact is that if we're humble, we can't get hurt. And so there was one devotee, Mahavishnu Swami, and this was many years ago. Yeah, somebody was criticising him, and he heard the criticism directly from the person, and he said, anything else? And then maybe the person said one or two other things, and he said, is that all? He says, yes. He says, there's much more wrong with me than that. He says, is that all you can see? Wow. He says, and so in this way, he actually wasn't disturbed by it. He was thinking, oh, is that all that he sees about me? There's so much more wrong with me than that. So in this way, he wasn't disturbed. It was genuine humility, and you can't really fake it. You can imitate that, but then it's just like that. What was that example now? Yeah, someone's pretending. There was this Birbal story. Someone was a spy, and they were from another country, and they learned the language, and they were getting to the king's court, and his intention was to find out that country's secrets, so they could make some plan of attack. Birbal suspected that he wasn't who he said he was. So at night time, when he was sleeping, he threw a bucket of cold water over the guy, and then he woke up and started speaking in his native tongue. And then he discovered that he was on his leg. So when the test came, then he couldn't fake that he was of that country. So humility is not something we can fake. We can try to practice it. I believe that Radhanath Maharaj says that the way to become humble is to practice it. It's not just going to happen without practice.
Yeah, humility is, it's a mature stage. To reach the stage of Nishtha is you've gone through the whole Anatta and the Vritti, and you're coming out the other end now, you're on the threshold of Ruchi. And then the Shakti, then you start becoming aware of your constitutional position. So it's most of our journey, personally speaking, will be coming to the stage of Nishtha in our life in Krishna consciousness. And to achieve that steadiness will be when you've achieved real humility. And you see that the nature of a very humble person is he's not insecure. So his sense of worth isn't dependent upon anybody else. He just accepts himself for what he is. Okay, this is where I am, and it's not very good, and I should be a lot better, but I accept myself for where I am. So he's quite secure in his humility. Whereas what has happened, see, if a person is insecure, he's proud to kind of compensate, because he's not good about himself. And so to compensate for it, he's that little bit louder, that little bit more pushy, that little bit more self-assertive, to try and compensate for the fact that he really doesn't feel he's up to the mark in the first place. And this is his way of guarding against it and telling everybody else, so that they'll be so busy worrying about themselves, they won't bother seeing him, you see. So when we have that inner security, then we can start looking at being humble, and we're not afraid that everyone else is getting the respect around there, everyone else is getting the recognition. What about me? What about me? What about me? And what about me? I don't deserve anything. I'm just appreciating It's like sometimes devotees say, I've done so much for ISKCON, what has ISKCON ever given me? What have they ever done for me? So how can you think like that? You've just been given the opportunity of devotional service. You've been given the chance to chant the holy name. You've been given some prasadam. These are all, they're immeasurably beneficial. And then suddenly you're looking in your pocket, what has it ever given me? Well, is that what you were expecting when you joined, that your pockets were going to fill up with gold coins one morning when you're chanting your japa? You look in your bead bag and it's got a gold bar in it. Thanks, Krishna. Now we're getting places. So you've entered the contract with the wrong one. You didn't read the fine print. The contract isn't getting recognition, getting some special situation. The contract is that you're hoping to achieve this stage of really appreciating. I mean, Krishna, we say the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, Kamsa was Krishna conscious. He wasn't Krishna appreciative. When we talk about Krishna consciousness, what we're meaning is we're so full of appreciation for where we are, for the devotees that we've got, for the service that we've been given. That's Krishna consciousness. I feel so blessed, so privileged that Krishna's put me in this situation. He's so kind. I'm so happy that I'm getting a chance to do this. That's Krishna consciousness.
Questions, but is a very nice one. It would seem like when we come to Krishna consciousness, we may not have the purest of desire, and we may not even be aware that's the case because years later we're expecting something for it. So perhaps we're materially motivated all along and known to ourselves even. Whereas it seems that the deal is Trinadapi Sunechana, feed the us and chant the holy in a humble state of mind, etc. Then you go back to Godhead, that's the deal. There's not any other deal being offered. So if we don't succeed in that, then it's no one else to blame but ourselves. And there's no other, it's like, okay, you didn't make it back to Godhead, but here's a nice tidy sum of money or something like that to keep you going until you can get it together.
Yeah, and also to resonate on that point, we've come to Krishna consciousness maybe for the wrong reasons. I came from a tiny house in Manchester, and I was a smelly punk rocker. And if I had a bath once a week, I don't think I used to have a bath once a week, actually. I think it was a special occasion to have a shower, And to have a shower once a day was an amazing breakthrough for me on the cleanliness front. It was so it was quite a conditioned, and I didn't really, although I read it was supposed to be a surrender and a sacrifice. The food was better. I was clean. I didn't smell anymore. I had a great haircut. I had nice people. I had some fantastic service. I was painting at the time. I was in a palatial building. I think it was four floors up, Chaitanya College. So I went from this tiny little house into this amazing, and the prasadam at that time, there'd been some difficulty with the leadership, and so they decided that what they would do to keep everyone around is have feasts. So there was a feast every week, and I'd never seen anything like it, So I didn't really feel like I was sacrificing a lot. It wasn't until later on the penny started dropping what it meant to sacrifice. So like Prabhupada was saying, the contract that we enter into is that we want to become humbler than the straw on the street. We want to become more tolerant than the tree. That's really what we're asking for. So we may not actually realize, but if you think about it, what's the process with which I will have to be engaged to bring me to the point of feeling lower than the straw on the street and to become more tolerant than the tree? Can you imagine what that, if you said that to a bhakta, okay, we're going to be putting you through a machine now, it'll be poking you, and then it's going to slap you, and they'll probably spin you up and down a few times. It's like the intense purification course. Instead of waiting like 30 years for it, we're going to put you through this, and in 3 hours you'll come and do it, and you'll be so tolerant, and you'll be so, are you okay for this? Anyway, never mind. And then you push him in and press the button, and he's getting whacked upside down and smacked around, rammed against the wall. And he comes out the other end, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so, I probably set my respectful obeisances." Now, Krishna doesn't do it like that. He stretches it over a long time, until eventually you come out and you think, "Oh, I'm so pleased." You know? So it's a slow, he does the slow, but that's really what it is. That's what we've asked for. And Chris is just kind of gently trying to break it to us. Well, look, this is what you asked for, son. You know, do you want to be free of everything? What are you going to have to? Like I've been praying lately, please make me humble, but I'm praying, please make me humble, and I'm looking around to see if anything's going to drop on my head, you know. Please make me a bit more humble. Something's not too painful. Just a little bit more humble, not too much more humble. A bit at a time, like that, you know. So the first stage of reaching humility is to become aware that you're not. Because you can maybe think, I'm just going to speed up the process. I'll just say to Prabhupada, I'm the most fallen devotee. I'm lower than the straw under the dust of the lowest street on the planet. That's what I'm at. You can think I'm just going to do that, you know, and try and be like that. But the first stage is actually I'm really proud. I'm actually such a proud person. And then when you start to see that, and you're okay about, well, okay, how kind Krishna must be. He's accepted me, but I'm so proud. And then that's when humility can start to come. But you have to first of all see that you're proud. And then you've got something to be humble about. You feel ashamed. You think, I shouldn't even show my face to the devotees. I'm just such a rascal, you know. So that's when the humility starts coming. You know? You can't become proud of being humble, you see.
Mama.
Well, it's interesting because there's two things. There's low self-esteem. Now, there's two things. There's shame and there's guilt. I've been reading about this, David Rico. So the difference between shame and guilt is something that you do and you feel bad about it for a few days, then you get on with it. Shame is something you carry with you your whole life. And shame you can't do anything about. If you're ashamed, you just stay like that. Shame's a problem because shame is unfavorable for your Krishna consciousness. Shame means you won't try hard. And the payback is the grungy payback, because with everything, a negative state of mind, there's always some kind of a payback. So if you're ashamed, you don't have to take responsibility. You don't have to be accountable. You don't have to try hard. You don't have to make much of an endeavor because you're just ashamed of yourself. Whereas if you're humble, you think, oh, that was so terrible. But then you think, I need to make up. I'm going to go and give that devotee a gift. I'm going to just go to that devotee and tell them, actually, I really love you, Prabhu, and I'm so sorry. That's humility. Shame is something which compromises you. It's something, so you distinguish between the two. I am humble. If you're feeling guilty, then guilty is something that you feel, but it's not. You are not guilty. You're just feeling guilty. But shame is something that you identify as. You are the shame. That's you. So it's a false ego, because you can have a false ego of thinking you're really, really cool. I'm the Elvis Presley of the bhajan here. You grow a seeker and put some grease on it there. Elvis Presley, Kirtaniya, and you're so, you know. But then the other side of false ego is, I am the most useless piece of dirt in the entire existence. It's a false ego. It's not. Krishna doesn't make pieces of stone. Well, in one sense he does, but he all the souls, all the jivas, they're all spiritual, perfect, ampanam. They're all beautiful. They're all perfect. So it's false. It's a false ego. So humility is, you can feel guilty about something, but then immediately, well, that wasn't good. Okay, well, what should we do then? Let's get in more. Maybe we should be more enthusiastic and be more careful. Let's do it better the next time. Shame, low self-esteem. Oh, I'm just so disempowered. I can never do anything. I'm too fallen. I can never actually chant properly. I'll never be able to do anything. So you just disempower yourself. And there's a difference between failing and being a failure, because if you're a failure, it means you give up. If you keep failing, then you will succeed. Failing doesn't mean you're going to fail. Only when you give up are you a failure. No matter how many times you get it wrong. You know, if you're 35 and you're still trying to walk, but you're still trying to walk, I mean, eventually, you know, you will get there. You will eventually be able to walk, but if you give up, you decide when you're a baby, you know, you've fallen down a few times, people are laughing at you, and you're a little baby, you're 6 months old, and you say, I've had enough of this. I'm just not going to bother trying to stand up, you know. Then you won't be able to walk. So failing's okay. That's how we learn. That's part of the process. How we learn, actually, by failing. So don't be afraid of failing. Just be afraid of giving up. Don't let the things you can't do stop you doing the things you can do. And if you keep doing the things you can do, you'll eventually be able to do the things you can't do. So if you just continue on in the process humbly and feeling guilty sometimes, but no less enthusiastic to try the best that you can, then you'll achieve success. They say that Krishna likes the devotees in the spiritual world because they're all pure and perfect, but he especially likes the jivas in the material world that are trying to love him because they're trying hard. It's easy to love Krishna in the spiritual world, but if you're trying to love Krishna in the material world, Krishna's that really softens Krishna's heart. Look at him, he's trying like anything. He's so conditioned, he keeps falling down and he keeps getting back up and he keeps trying, you know. So that's what steals Krishna's heart. That's why he says, Api Chetsu Darachiro, he says, they are minds. Nobody should criticize them. Okay, shall I finish there? Yeah. Iskon Guru Vindaki, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Harinavu ki jai, Go Premanandi.